until the ultimate clash in the 18th.
Do you remember where we were? 15 minutes? I said before I left, and now I don't recall. Are you on silent? Did you mute yourself?
10 minutes even.
10 minutes even. Look at you. Your superior white IQ.
The problem is that minorities get treated like
It's a joke.
less than that. So if you understand that, you can understand what white privilege is supposed to mean. As I've said, that's not how
I
it
get
comes
what you're trying to say.
It comes off as white people being the problem because they get something extra that they shouldn't. So to people who have already retreated into their in-group and every time they look out, they're told that they're part of the problem, well, look, I don't need a psych study to prove this. We already have a larger sample size than we could ever hope for. And guess what? Trump won. And while not everyone who voted for Trump is a racist, not everyone who voted for Trump is a white supremacist, many of them roll their eyes at social justice and political correctness. Many of them are just tired of being told what to say and that they are the problem. Of course, political correctness and social justice aren't solely to blame, but if they were working as intended, he wouldn't have been elected. So we ignore them as contributing factors at our own peril. And obviously the neo-Nazis and the KKK have existed long before Trump, but they are oddly more popular than you would expect if social justice was working. So you end up with things like the Unite the Right rally last weekend. What, did you think I wasn't going to talk about this?
And here comes fuck the South. If you're wondering how he's going to work it in, this is how he works it. Because that is the point of this video, is fuck the South. Just plain racist.
Let's make one thing clear. This wasn't some spontaneous grassroots demonstration.
Right.
This was a planned rally by white supremacists and Nazis. Yeah, technically they're not
we know
Nazis.
because we
they're not members
interviewed one.
Yeah.
of the German National Socialist Party. So fine, they're wannabe Nazis or neo-Nazis. It doesn't matter. When you do
Or as I call them, at least holding the door open for Nazis.
things like this and carry flags like this, you're a Nazi. And they weren't just some fringe...
Well, press pause for a second.
I want to show something right there, too.
It was a planned rally by white supremacists and Nazis. Yeah, technically they're not Nazis. They're not members of the German National Socialist Party. So fine, they're wannabe Nazis or neo-Nazis. It doesn't matter. When you do things like this and carry flags like this...
Go on.
I've forgotten now.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Just that moment is going to be important later. Notice there's an American flag there.
Yeah.
You're a Nazi. And they weren't just some fringe group that showed up uninvited. These were the guys who got the permits to hold this rally.
He's correct.
So if you were there to just defend our history, as soon as you saw those flags, you should have walked away. But I digress.
And I also condone the fucking Unite the Right rally, both of them. We fucking laughed at the other one last week.
Yeah. So here I've remembered my thought.
Okay.
In the same way that the SJWs that would usher in the communists would be the first to get the boot, or the gulags, as it were.
The useful idiots.
The fake Nazis would be in the same situation when it came to the real Nazis. Right? They wouldn't be Nazi enough for them.
Right. That's what I meant by holding the door open.
Yeah. But they would be the first to.
Yeah, I always speak in metaphors.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's what we watched that one KGB defector that called them useful idiots. And that's exactly what they are.
Yeah, but in the same light on the right, like the alt-right and
I agree.
The white supremacists that say that they want to live separate, but they don't actually want to commit genocide. They would be the first to go because the people that do want the genocide would not want them in their party.
I mean, yeah.
Okay, go on.
If you want to know more about the rally itself, I'll put a link to the Vice News segment down below. Consider it required viewing. They wanted to show that they're not just an internet meme, that they have real numbers and a clear message. They even say that they want to use ethnic cleansing in order to create an ethno-state. It will make you angry. and it should make you angry. This wasn't a rally to defend a statue, even though that was the stated purpose. I've discussed this before, but the issue has come boiling up again. It's time to drop the Confederate stuff. As I've discussed on this channel several times before, the Confederacy existed for one purpose: to keep slavery. That point isn't in dispute.
That is why, that's the reason the Confederate government chose to leave. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
So that is indisputable.
It actually makes me quite angry to see people defending Robert E. Lee by saying that he abhorred slavery, by using the same quote that you know what? Here, this is a popular meme on Facebook, and by that quote, yeah, it sure sounds like he dislikes slavery. But they're cutting off the next several sentences, like, I think it is a greater evil to the white than to the colored race. The blacks are immeasurably better off here than in Africa, morally, physically, and socially. It goes on.
Okay, that is not a statement that I could in any way defend, right? And let's keep in mind that when we are looking at the past, we cannot judge the past by today's moral lens. Okay.
Of course.
So you have to judge them, and still looking through their lens, they are Johnny-come-latelys. Okay, they fought on the wrong side of a moral movement, and that's nothing to be proud of. Okay, but I do not think in any way that is why Robert E. Lee is such an admired general. And I think I can make a good case to you, Dave, particularly as to why. This is, he was actually supposed to be a Union general, and he retired to fight for the Confederacy. Okay? And this is his quote as to why. So Robert E. Lee, one of the resigning officers, who had initially been offered the assignment as commander of a field army to suppress the rebellion, Lee disapproved of secession, but refused to bear arms against his native state, Virginia, and resigned to accept the position as commander of Virginia CS forces. He eventually became the commander of the Confederate Army. Okay? So this is a man who, when ordered to bring violence onto his native people on behest of a federal government, refused and joined his people. Do you think
that seems pretty solid logic?
That might garner a little respect from the people of his state and the army that he led. Okay.
Well, it should if it didn't.
If it doesn't, it should. Right here. Here's another quote. What a cruel thing war is, to fill our hearts with hatred instead of love for our neighbors.
Mm-hmm. But I want to touch back on something on the quote that he read. Even though it was prefaced with that other stuff, wouldn't you think, in the times and the place that he was, that would be pretty, like you would think that some of the slave masters would be like, what the fuck are you talking about? These are not human beings.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I don't want to use the term progressive, but it would certainly show a different thought process than a lot of the other people.
An abolitionist bent.
Yeah.
To his thinking. While I find, and man, you want to talk about stepping on a limb, here's a hot take for you, man. This one might get me hung. While his statement about it being a favor to bring blacks to America, that's a terrible thing to say at that time while they were in slavery, right? And for several generations since. But you'd have trouble finding many African Americans that would like to go back right now.
Oh well, that's neither here
That's
nor
here near there, but that just, there's a hot take that might get my fucking balls chopped off there. Here's another quote. I brought in a few. If you have any fault to find with anyone, tell him, not others, of what you complain. There is no more dangerous experiment than that of undertaking to be one thing before a man's face and another behind his back. He just seems like a respectable man, doesn't he, Dave? Here's a couple more. I have fought against the people of the North because I believe they were seeking to wrest from the South its dearest rights, and that is to secede. That is not to have slaves. That's of self-governance. But I have never cherished towards them bitter or vindictive feelings, and I have never seen the day when I did not pray for them. So this is after the war. He's being reconciliatory against the North. A union can only be maintained by swords and bayonets. A union that can only be maintained by swords and bayonets has no charm for me. If the union is dissolved and government disrupted, I shall return to my native state and share the miseries of my people, and save in defense will draw my sword on none. Here's one more. The war was an unnecessary condition of affairs and might have been avoided if forbearance and wisdom had been practiced on both sides. You think this might be why we have some statues of the guy?
Yeah, I would say. We're having similar issues with statues, and
that's just about to come up. That's my next segment that he's going to walk us into.
And it gets way worse. Link to his full quote down below. But he was very pro-slavery. Or they'll show this one. Yes, Grant owned slaves through his wife's estate. You know who else did? Robert E. Lee. He owned his own slaves, but then inherited more through his wife's estate. He eventually freed them in 1862, in the middle of the Civil War. But I also really enjoy this meme, because yes, there is a Lenin statue in Seattle.
Hang on.
But the people there have...
Hang on. 1 second. Okay, now I'm not going to say that it's... Jesus Christ. Owning people is terrible. Retarded. It's terrible. It's absolutely retarded.
Bad, McCall.
But you can't say he freed them. They were in the middle of the Civil War. Like it's a flippant, no big deal that he freed them.
He freed them in the middle of Civil War. We'll get to all of that a little bit later too. You're sitting up straighter earlier, Dave. Can you give me a better posture?
Yeah, sure.
Sorry.
Yeah, no worries.
Give me work.
There you go. Is that better?
Yeah, I slouched last episode. I'm trying to keep my posture going. Oh, look at what you got.
Maximum effort.
Dude,
there you go.
What's the shirt? Who is that?
Who do you think it is?
Deadpool. Deadpool. Okay, I just watched Deadpool too. Pretty good. All right.
Yeah.
By the way, this Lenin statue, he's making a good point. It's on private property, but you know what? And people do complain about it, but you know what hasn't happened? No one's ripped it down. Okay? No one's fucked it up, and it's not the only one. BT dubs.
Been complaining about it since it went up. But it's on private property, so it's much harder to take down, unlike the Lee statues, which are on public property. And that's part of the problem. These statues went up in public places mostly in the 1910s and 20s, during the heyday of the KKK.
Already covered that.
As signals to black people to know your place, or at least that's how they saw them. As I said in the beginning of the video, 50 years later during the Civil Rights Movement, the Confederate flag became a thing. Obviously it
Except the Confederate flag was always used by the people, and once again, it's not the Confederate flag, and he's about to get it.
Existed during the Confederacy, but it disappeared for almost 100 years. And as you should know, this isn't the Confederate flag. This is. This is the stars and bars. So, what the heck is this?
You know that?
No.
It's the Confederate battle flag and naval ensign. Similar to this, actually. Do you know what this is? It's not just the top corner of the US flag, it's the naval ensign, or it was until 2002. It's what was flown on the back of ships to tell everyone that this is an American ship. If a picture tells 1,000...
Okay. So this is, it's not the Confederate flag. It is the flag that was used for the soldiers fighting under Lee, and eventually for all the fighting soldiers, okay? So it is not a monument to the Confederacy. It's a monument to the soldiers that fought and died. Okay? So I'm going a little deeper into this. The people fighting in the South were conscripted. A lot of them, right? You were immune from conscription if you owned slaves or if you had money to pay your way out.
Okay.
Okay. So
why hang on. Okay, this is fucking crazy now. Why if you own slaves
so you can
were
keep the
you
economy going.
okay.
Okay. That was the reason they demanded
But-
slaves anyway. Is
but-
to float the
but-
economy.
So the poor people that
Went and fought the war.
couldn't afford slaves.
Yeah.
Well, see, that's not a very good look for.
To the point that the
For-
soldiers called it the rich man's war, the poor man's fight on the Union side, or on the Confederate sides. See, and once again, this flag was called the rebel flag when I was growing up.
Okay.
To the point that I was with a girlfriend in Colorado talking to her mother, and it came up. This is when they were taking it down in South Carolina, and I called it the rebel flag, and they said, "What are you talking about?"
Mm-hmm.
It's that big of a cultural, like what it's even called, what it means. They like people outside don't understand, and so it represents okay. And another name, you know, that the upper class called the war from the South was the War of Northern Aggression. You see, because this war was on our soil. It was our states that were invaded. It was our cities that were burned. It was our crops that were burned. It was Georgia that was purposely, quote, made to howl, burnt to the ground. It was our women that were raped. Okay? If you weren't conscripted, wouldn't you pick up your gun at that point?
Well, of course.
And should you be ashamed of that?
No.
And tell me, we're going to get into words like traitors in a moment. Who's a traitor? Okay? Which is more traitorous? People demanding that they leave their country and become their own country, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or a federal government denying their right and going and using scorched earth tactics to stop it. Which is more traitorous? People leaving their government or government murdering their people? Right? This might be why this flag and why Southern pride holds a little bit of meaning for some people and why they're so defensive about it. And you know what I'm saying? It's very complex. It's hard to articulate. Not everyone can do it, but it's a feeling. You know, my grandfather, he's 78 or 80 right now on my other side. He flew. He still flies the Confederate flag on his property. Now he's the reason I'm not white. You see, he married a young mixed woman that he met when he was in the Navy. So we come from a long military tradition that I didn't take part in, and so did no one better here. He also, from what I can tell from his video, served in Iraqi freedom. So it holds a. For one, it represents that wound, and you can probably understand why people from the outside would like to take that symbol away, and why we would want to hold on to it so hard. And we'll get more into it again when he actually not only attacks the flag here, but Southern pride itself, the clip that brought us here in the first place.
Words, then this says a lot more than just the Confederacy. It's a symbol of what
Damn
the
right.
Confederacy stood for. And no,
Wrong.
not states' rights. Slavery and white supremacy over black people. There's a reason why the neo-Nazis were walking around looking like this. That's a Nazi flag. Pretty easy to figure out what it is and what it means. I don't really know what this flag is, but this seems a little out of place if it's just a symbol of states' rights next to the Nazi one.
Do you remember the flag that I went back and showed earlier?
Yeah, but give me a second. Just because somebody carries it there doesn't mean they know A, what it was for, and B, it belongs there.
Don't get me wrong. There is a minority of people that do see it as a racist symbol, for like, you know, white people that see it as a pro-Confederate
Sure.
symbol. Of course, every symbol means different to every person. That's what a symbol is. All right. It's a fill in the blank.
Yeah, but what my point is if the guy was sitting there with a Canadian flag,
Yeah.
would you then and you can't say that the Canadian flag is clean from oppression, right? Because we did fuck up the natives, and we had residential schools all the way into the 90s. My point is just because that flag is being held by somebody in that line. I don't have an opinion on it one way or another. I don't know enough about it, to be honest with you. But I'm just saying that flag being in that one position at that one time does not mean what he's saying it means.
Well, it is used by racist groups, right?
But just because they use it doesn't mean that it's
they
racist.
also use American flags, and that's why I went back and paused it when they was next to a swastika flag was an American flag in the earlier clip, right? And the whole thing earlier about there is the flag for the spirit and the flag for the officers, right? That's the American and the rebel flag. Yeah. Right? Who turned and committed a genocide together, finished a genocide together. All right. So if ours is dirty, so is yours.
This used to be a Hindu symbol for thousands of years. Then some jerk in the 1930s used it and changed its meaning for everyone forever. If I were to get a tattoo of this and try to tell people that it was just a symbol of good luck, nobody would believe.
Press pause. No, it didn't change everyone forever. You go to Japan and you show that symbol. You go to China and you show that symbol. Hell, you go to the Hindus and the Buddhists that were using that symbol before. They are still using that symbol. They have no idea what it means.
That's right.
Carry on, sir.
That's right. As far as that goes, you know, and once again, you seem like a real nice fella, Mr. Better. But fuck you in your ass for comparing us to Nazis. Okay? Hey, Dave, how many people did we put in the ovens? How many countries did we invade?
At that point, zero.
Zero. Right. We were invaded. Okay. All right. So people declaring independence once again for a bad reason. For a bad reason. People declaring independence for a bad reason is not the same as trying to conquer a continent of sovereign powers.
But hang on. I'm going to push you back a little bit here, Dustin. Would if there was a place right now that you knew for a fact owned slaves, a country, and they beat their slaves and they bred their slaves.
Okay, so Somalia exists, and we're talking about it.
Yeah. So and Libya. Would you not think it was a good thing for the U.S. to go in there and physically stop it?
Yes, but this is 200 years later.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
And if we were still practicing slavery today, I would say that intervention is needed. Okay. But like I said, in all likelihood, but between industrialization, invention, and the British shutting down the internet, the transatlantic slave trade, it was destined to end.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, like I said, look, in the end, I prefer the United States the way it is. And by the way, this is less like let's say, I think a good analogy would be like, how the UK just voted to leave the EU.
Mm-hmm.
So if the EU had a standing army and had more power, it would be like, now Germany sends in troops to stop them from leaving because they don't want open borders, right? Which is a human rights issue. And in 100 years, we might look back and so you see what I'm saying?
Except Britain would fuck them up.
It's not an equivalency, but it's a fair analogy to be made.
Sure.
It's something.
Sure. And the other point I would make, kind of like to contradict my point, is that the people that declared the war and sent the soldiers down south were racist. They were like, Lincoln was a racist.
Yep.
Right? It wasn't like he was like,
we're gonna get to that. We have more video. It's short, but we have more video.
Okay. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I know, dude. It's a lot here.
Believe
I
me.
should have
So
watched it
even
prior.
if
Yeah. You know, I think he mentioned, maybe he didn't. Maybe
up to
we
this
might skip that
point you
part.
believe that this flag is just a symbol of states' rights or Southern pride, that's not what it means anymore. Some jerks have taken it and changed it. It's just plain racist.
No, and the minority people do not get to dictate what a symbol means.
And if
No,
pictures say 1,000 words, then a 3D statue in a public place says 1,000,000.
And racist is one word. So there's still a lot of words left to be said.
It's not just a monument to the person, it's a monument to what they stood for. What are they remembered for? The argument that removing statues will erase history is dumb. First of all, they aren't destroying the statues, they're simply moving them to museums. But even if they were destroying the statues, that wouldn't remove them from history books.
No, but it will prevent the very nuanced and deep dive conversation that the public is having about these issues right now and that we're having.
And the statues would be the first. Next would be the books.
Right, right. And it's not just these statues, and we're just about to get into that now that he's moving on.
You haven't seen a Hitler statue, yet we all know who that is. Likewise, the where will it
Another comparison to fucking Nazis.
end argument isn't valid either. Nobody wants to take down monuments to Washington and Jefferson. They were founding fathers and presidents. They were
Yes, there are.
Okay, well, this is
There
a
are
year
people
ago.
that do one. Yeah.
This
Okay.
is a year ago. So didn't people just took down a statue of your founding father?
Yeah, they had to apologize and put it back.
Okay,
But yeah,
but they went for
did.
it. Okay.
They went for it, but then in Montreal, some people spray painted red blood, like red paint for blood, and a guy was arrested in Saskatchewan for pouring blood on the hands of a Sir John A. Macdonald statue. So I mean, it is happening here, and like obviously he was the architecture of the native school systems and a lot of the issues, but this is a subject that I obviously know more than the one that you're talking about. There's a duality to this. Like
There's a duality to everyone.
yeah, so he was the first standing prime minister to give Native people voting rights. Now they had to live in the city, not on the reservation, but he still gave them voting rights. It was taken away by the next prime minister that came into office. But I was having I wouldn't say an argument, but a disagreement about Sir John A. Macdonald with a First Nations fellow, and he didn't know that. He thought that the first time that they had gained the right to vote was in the 60s. But I mean, he was calling Sir John A. Macdonald a genocidal maniac. My point was, if he was, then you wouldn't be here, right? He for sure was trying to commit cultural genocide. He was trying to take them into Canadian society and wipe out their culture and just have them live as white Europeans.
Yeah.
Which I'm not saying is right. It's fucking completely wrong.
Yeah.
But there's a difference.
Yes.
There's a big difference. And I think with this, if I knew more about it, I would probably see duality as well. You know?
Well, I would say that, okay, in order to achieve great things, you have to have an extreme confidence and an extreme will. You have to believe in yourself, and you have to enact what you think and feel. That's the only way you can do things like found a fucking country. Okay?
Yeah.
And no one's perfect. Everyone is fallible. So just as much as they are going to exude their excellence, they are going to exude their failures. I think it's inevitable.
Scotland's worse.
And
Before we get back into that, Scotland's worse. He was born in Scotland, and they've wiped him from every government website.
That's shitty. That's shitty. We'll talk about the Scottish in a little bit. So in the weeks and months following his video, unfortunately, 8 monuments were attacked. Recently, Silent Sam was destroyed, which was not a general. That was one of those soldiers that were fighting and invading federal government, killing and fucking raping and burning and destroying. They destroyed him. Lincoln was burned. Okay. Jefferson was defaced. by Black Lives Matter protesters. Okay? And you know, and once again, I made the statement earlier that the secession was about slavery, but the war was about secession. Okay? Here's a few interesting things to consider. One is this letter from Lincoln, which is, if I could save the Union without freeing any slaves, I would do it. If I could save it by freeing all the slaves, I would do it. If I could save it by freeing some and leaving others alone, I would also do that. What I do about slavery and colored race, I do because I believe it helps to save this Union. Okay? So the soldiers in the South were fighting for their lives. The government in the North was fighting to preserve the Union. Okay? I don't know if you know this, Dave. 4 slave states stayed with the Union. Okay? They allowed people that wanted to go and fight for the Confederacy to do so, but the North, the best I can tell, someone correct me, drafted out of these states as well. So you have people that are in slave states fighting for the Union. Okay? The war's halfway over before the Emancipation Proclamation. Okay? Freeing slaves. It's difficult to say that this war was over slavery. Secession was about slavery. The war, like every war, is very deep and complex. Like every war. And the winner always wants to make it very simple. Always, every time.
Well, to the winner goes the spoils, my friend, and they write history.
Here is one last reason why you want to play up slavery and play down secession if you were particularly the Northern government at that time, the Union government. In the Jefferson Davis trial, you notice no one celebrates Jefferson Davis?
Mm-hmm.
That's because it's not about
American.
The Confederacy. Well, here's the thing: we should celebrate General Lee's birthday.
Okay.
Okay. We don't give a fuck about Jefferson Davis. He was the president of the Confederacy, by the way.
Oh, okay. You guys actually had a president?
See, that's how much it doesn't matter. Yeah.
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 Okay.
Yeah. Of course we did.
Okay.
He was a senator in Mississippi, I do believe.
Okay.
Before, it's some one of the states.
And how long did the Confederacy last?
Just for the war, which was,
yeah, but how long did that last?
Oh man, you caught me with my pants down. The exact dates I am. I'm less than certain about. April 12th, 1861 to 1865, 4 years.
Oh, okay, so enough time to get a hand job.
By the way, another reation people might want to memorize this is it was the most bloody war in American history, still is, and was more bloody than all wars up to about halfway through Vietnam.
And the bloodiest Civil War in human history.
In human history, right?
Yes.
Right. So to say those soldiers shouldn't be memorialized, I think is fucking heartless, man. It's terrible.
I had a boss when I was, I'm going to say 18, 19 years old. I was driving forklift.
We're like 3 hours, by the way. We're Joe Rogan level, but let's go.
Yeah, that's okay. He would drive down to the States. Remember, I'm Canadian.
Yeah.
To do the reenactments. And he would play a Confederate soldier. Like that was what his part of the reenactments were. I always wonder, I'm like, dude, you're Canadian. Why are you going down there to do the Civil War reenactments? And he was just a war buff, and that was an interesting war to him.
But I mean, it's an interesting war to me. There's a lot of reasons to just like I'm interested in war. It was the precursor to World War One. It ended with Gatling guns and some trenches. Anyway, this one last thing here. This is about the Jefferson Davis trial. You see, he was to be tried for treason. What do you think happened, Dave? You think he was found guilty? Let's read. In 1867, he was prepared to argue that he did not betray the country because once Mississippi left it, he was no longer a U.S. citizen. Everybody thought it was going to be a test case on the legality of secession, says Cynthia Nicoletti, a University of Virginia legal scholar whose book Secession on Trial is due out in August. Sears people believed he had a chance of winning. So the trial about the war was going to be about secession, not about the legality of being slave owners.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I'm a little bit confused on the leaving part. So like here, if your province wants to leave, you have a referendum. You get more than 50% of the vote, and that's it. You can leave. Are you guys not allowed to do that?
We were. Well, that's what the case was going to be about, whether or not states had the right to leave. And once again, we were closer to the EU than the United States federal government at this time.
Okay.
And a lot of people didn't expect it to last. And we, once again, we were not this coast to coast solidified. Even like when people talked about the United States, they talked about them as a group rather than a single entity. Like the grammar used at that time.
Do you think that a lot of the America rah like my country's super patriotic, but they're not as
real quick
loud
he was
and
pardoned.
Over the top. Okay.
By the way, he was pardoned because they were so unsure about being able to actually convict him, which would make the North war criminals.
Yes.
So once again, why might people want to hold on to this? Go on, Dave.
Do you think that the America rah like the flags everywhere and the fucking the over the top 4th of July celebrations? Now, I'm not saying that we're any less patriotic than you guys, but we're just not as loud about it. Do you think that was designed to kind of bring the country together after having such a bloody civil war?
Yeah, there's actually serious efforts on both sides to push a national unified identity. Mm-hmm. It's called the Reconstruction era. It's
it explains a lot. Yeah. It explains a lot. And I'm the first to admit that I'm probably just as, or if not more, patriotic about where I live. Just right. we're not as like, we don't like, well, I in my house have a flag, but I don't have a flag outside, and we're not as like, we don't go places and chant Canada. You know what I mean?
Well, that's dying fast.
It is,
It's dying fast. Yeah. Let's push this video.
Hey, sorry, man.
That's fine.
Slave owners, but that's not what they are remembered for. Martin Luther King was an adulterer. Gandhi was an extreme racist and weird pseudo-pedophile, but that's not what they were remembered for either. What is Robert E. Lee? A Confederate general. The argument that they were rebels, traitors, and losers, while true, doesn't help either. It's not a statue to them losing. And there are statues to historical losers everywhere. This is a statue of William Wallace. If you saw Braveheart, you know that he also lost. But that's not why he has a statue in Scotland. It's because he's a symbol of the Scottish national identity and fought against English tyranny. There are many legitimate reasons to remove Confederate statues, but bringing up the fact that they lost the war isn't.
Did he really just try to use Braveheart as a accurate historical context? Like, the figure William Wallace existed, but did he really just, because that was mostly made up, right?
Yeah, I mean, the figure was real, and he is celebrated.
Yes, but the movie was.
Yeah, he was talking about the movie. I don't believe it. He's talking about the real figure. Yeah, okay. I'm gonna give him that credit. Yeah, no.
Okay, but he did say Braveheart. If you've seen Braveheart,
he did. I think he was so you knew who he was talking about.
Okay,
I think he was just making a pop culture reference. No, okay. I'm on his side here. Which by the way, this back here behind me is the Alabama flag. You see, it's the rebel flag without the stars in a different color pattern. What it actually is St. Andrew's cross, or the Scottish cross. So not only the South has a very, before we He's setting me up for this.
Is a Confederate general statue for? If you said the Southern identity, you need to ask yourself what that means. Because unlike the Scottish, the Southern identity is rooted in racism. Thinking that the Civil War was over states' rights or Southern...
Okay, so you know what one thing the Southern identity is rooted in? The Scottish identity. This is St. Andrew's Cross behind me, which is what I was getting at, which is the patron saint of Scotland. And at the time of the Civil War, Alabama itself was, I think, 75% Scottish. So Dixie, the Confederate States, this pride, the genetic component of it is of Irish, Scot-Irish, and Scotch, which is three different, right? There's the Irish, the Scottish, and the Scotch-Irish. And so the Scotch-Irish settled Appalachia, and the Irish and the Scottish settled the Eastern Seaboard, more Scottish in the South, but a lot of Irish too. And so there's a very, 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 very long, going back to Julius Caesar, hate between the Scottish, the Irish, and the Anglo-Saxons. Goes back a long way. Like, in Game of Thrones, the wildlings are the Scottish beyond the wall, the borderlands. That like the wall is an actual wall that was built by the Romans.
Yes.
So that's what Scotland is. That's what Ireland is. It's the parts that couldn't be conquered by the Romans. And they had a particular culture that they brought with them. A really good book about this is Cracker Culture by Grady McWeeny. And another good book on it is Black Rednecks and White Liberals by Thomas Sowell. It's a really good book that explains that there is a large cultural difference between the Southeast. It's of rough and tumble, more of a honor culture, a willingness to fight, disorganized, less focused on business. A lot of problems with it, man. A lot of problems. Not so focused on education, right? But this is the beginning of what the South is and what helps it form its identity. And then you also have the largest population of blacks, as the map showed us earlier, has always been in the South. And look, black identity in the United States and Southern identity have been intertwined from day one. Okay?
Okay.
They are partially the same thing. So what, outside of racism, what is Southern pride? Part of it is what it means to the good parts of the culture that the Scottish and the Irish brought with them, which is like Protestantism, this decentralized type of religion they set up in the United States. They stayed tribal, Gaelic and Celtic to the very end, right? And stayed rebellious, the Fighting Irish. You can find endless literature where they talk about the Irish just like black people, and this is hate on the South.
Of course, no dogs,
it's
no
always passed
Irish.
off as Irish hate, but most of them are in the South.
Yeah.
Like it's hate against the South. Like we were always known as dumb, stupid, and here's the thing, that's a stereotype like most, based in truth, right? And that's also genetics intermixing with environment, because there was hookworm bringing down the IQ of the South for a long time, bringing down industriousness and intelligence by having an overburden on the nutrition system.
I really do think it's amazing how I guess I shouldn't, but it's just because it's from so long ago. I'm just amazed how the same groups of people that populated and brought forth your country, well, still hate each other, but also brought forth my country as well, right?
Yeah. But I don't think they segregate as much in your country. You don't still have the same divides. You didn't have a war. Ours probably would have went away if it wasn't for the fucking war.
Hang on. We had the Protestant Catholic War here, which you guys didn't have.
And they had that in the UK as well, yeah.
Yeah, that came over here from the UK. You guys didn't have that, and we had the French English Civil War. Yeah. Like, so we did have civil war, just not as extreme. But I'm just saying, like, when I think you're probably the only other country, if I was speaking to a citizen, they would say, yeah, the Irish, the Scots, the Scotch Irish and the English settled my country, and I would be like, yeah, 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 they did. You know what I mean? Like it's interesting.
Yeah, so back to Southern pride. There's the whole Scott Irish thing. The we were never conquered, I guess, until they came that last time and fucking finally won. Another part is the rich musical heritage that we have here in the South. American music, as it is today, was born in the South and was born largely in Appalachia. It's a mix of hillbillies and black culture. It starts with bluegrass, it starts with folk, Americana, turns into blues, and then you get rock and roll. Right, then you get country music before rock and roll, jazz. Where did it all come from, Dave?
The South.
It all came out of the South, right? You get your Seattle movement, you get your British invasion, you get your West Coast sounds.
Yeah, but even like, and this is way off topic, but even without the dirty blues sound, like that distorted amplifier, you don't get the British invasion. You don't get Led Zeppelin.
That's right.
Because they were all influenced by that dirty amp sound of the blues.
So you're to name the areas, like, bluegrass and folk came out of Appalachia, country came out of Nashville and Tennessee, southern rock came out of Muscle Shoals, Alabama. And a lot of blues came out of Muscle Shoals. You got your Mississippi Delta blues coming out of the Mississippi Delta, right? It was all right here in the Southeast, and there's this pride. We're also still known as the people that believe in leaning on yourself, right? Small government, of pulling yourself up by your bootstraps. It's not a recent thing that the government, that Republicans have fooled us into. It's who we always have been, who we always are. We would rather die on our feet starving than live on the teat. And that's still an attitude that we're losing. We take off our shoes when we come inside, Dave.
I remember I asked you that the other day. Yeah,
I call every adult that I come across ma'am and sir if I have a conversation with them.
Yeah.
Right, in real life, all doors open for everyone. Okay, but at the same time, there's a savagery to it, and what you have, once again, this blend of culture. If you believe in a beautiful mixing of culture, you should love the South, right? Because you had British aristocracy largely owning the plantations, and that's where you get this very good posture, genteel, fancy clothes plantation owners. Okay, the underclass of the Scotch and the Irish, the borderland people that moved in, and then you have the slaves that were there, and then the three came together, and it took an honor culture, and it ended up making a dignity culture, where everyone kept their unique identities, but slowly mixed together with pride.
Sure.
Like that's what it means to me, man. You can listen to songs like like the Doobie Brothers, and the Eagles, Seven Bridges Road. This is so old of an argument, David. I'm wrapping up here, man, because we've been at this for a long time. The song "Sweet Home Alabama." Everybody knows it.
Yes.
It is this exact discussion we're having right now between Neil Young and I forget the guy's name from Leonard Skinner, right? Because Neil Young wrote the song "Alabama" and "Southern Man," which was a scorching criticism, right? And in typical fashion, like, and it's so. I almost want to pull up the words. It's so Southern the way he does it. First, he's happy that he's going home to see his family. He's been disparaged, but he's lighthearted. He's lighthearted about it, and then he says, I hear Neil Young's been talking about us, but that doesn't bother me. And then he brings, like, later in the song, he talks about, in Birmingham, they love the governor, boo, 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 but we're doing what we can. Like, we have our problems and we're fighting them. We acknowledge them. And he says, Watergate doesn't bother me, But does it bother you? Tell me the truth. Like, do you care about your corruption on your side of the line? Are you concerned about the way your politicians are manipulating and cheating? We're trying to find ours. What about you? Do you acknowledge your problems? Right?
Mm-hmm.
It's just, and that's
But
the way
Neil Young Watergate,
Canadian, yeah,
Canadian, right?
Right. Well, but here's the thing. I get that he's a Canadian. He's speaking, but this is the same criticism we get over and over, man. Like rap. One other thing that keeps it together, and while we'll forever be rebels, man, is like the way the rest of the world sees the United States is the way the rest of the United States sees us. Right? This uncultured, fucking slack-jawed, loud, obnoxious, gun-toting, fucking fat asses, and it's halfway true. Because stereotypes are based in a little bit of truth, man.
Yeah.
And man, we have our problems, but I should no more be ashamed of my flag and my people than anyone else should be of theirs. I have a lot of pride, man.
Sure.
I get that. I'm proud that my family has fought in pretty much every American war, period. Revolutionary War, 1812, Civil War, all of them.
Sure. Why wouldn't you be? Of course you would be.
Right. So, why would I be ashamed that we fought for the Confederates? Like, they were defending their family. They were defending their people.
Well, I would say it would depend on the reason why they were fighting, right? Like, I would have to know that individual.
I would have to know there was individuals as well. But
if they were like, I'm fighting because I love slavery, then fuck them.
I'll say that one of them particular defected from the Confederate Army, would find Union soldiers and cut their hands off and then set them free. So I think it was personal.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that's about slaves. I think that's about you're destroying everything.
Yeah.
So anyway, I got a little emotional here, Dave. Like that's how, just like you're patriotic for your country, I'm patriotic for my country. But once again, we're not so centralized here.
Yeah.
Well, we like it local.
Like I said, my shit isn't. I don't feel like my country. Like if you look it up right now, it's going to say that Canada's, if not the most, one of the most stabilized democracies on the planet. But at this point, I don't feel like it's working. And there's evidence to back that, right? So I do get it, man. I do understand.
Yeah. Well, I hope I didn't come off as too much of a bigot here.
Well, you're super racist, but other than that, you're a good guy.
Yeah. I hope I made my case. I hope if Mr. Better ever comes across this video, he'll better understand what motivates people to be proud. It's everything from our military service to our resilience to fight to our love of the outdoors. The fact that we have more stars than our skies because we have less lights on at night. There's a thousand. We have the largest unexplored, cave system here in Alabama. We have some of the best game, fishing, deer hunting, man. Anyway.
Where is Mr. Knowing from?
You're going to laugh. Hawaii.
Okay. Oh.
He's from Hawaii. Oh. He's a military brat. His family's in the military. He joined himself. He grew up in Hawaii. I don't know if he was born there, but he grew up there. He's talked about it.
Okay. All right.
Went to college on GI Bills.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not going to fault him for any of that shit.
Look, man, like I said, I think he's a good guy. I'd have a beer with him. I would sit down and talk to him. I just think that he has a misunderstanding about who we are here and what we do.
Sure.
Look, when I'm, I didn't know my mother growing up. When I met her husband, he's this New York guy, older. She goes, we'll have to go visit him in Alabama sometime. They're living in Florida, and he goes, don't they hang people in Alabama? Like that's our own country. Dave, you've only found one insult that you'll always get a reaction out of me for. What is that?
Oh, I'd call you a Yank.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. They're north of the fucking line.
Well, no. You guys are see what's south of our line. That Yanks. Anything south of our line is Yanks.
Well, we draw our line a little bit further south, right along the Ohio River. So, Dave, does it bother you that I've been flying that flag for a good hour now?
Oh, I gotta tell you, man, it has no cultural or historical context for me. I think what I do find I find it super funny when I see Canadians wearing rebel flags. I find that super funny.
Dude, I found a guy in Switzerland wearing a Confederate shirt and had a Confederate flag, or excuse me, a rebel flag, rebel shirt.
I'm just like,
they brainwashed me into saying it, Dave.
Yeah. I've actually always known it as a rebel flag. To be honest, yeah.
Right.
To be honest with you, I've always known it as the rebel flag. I thought that the rebel flag was interchangeable with the Confederate flag. Like you could say either or, but I've known it as the rebel flag.
And like rebel, like my grandfather, I sit and he reminisces about being a young boy, and he told me, growing up in a house with one light bulb,
Sorry.
Do what you're doing. Finish.
There. Done.
Okay. He said, we were proud to be Southern, and we were rebels, and to me, Dave, growing up, the word rebel was interchangeable with free, wild, uninhibited.
Well, that's what the word kind of means, right?
Right. Why would we be ashamed?
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's wrap this up, man. This is super.
It is.
Alrighty. You pressed that shit already.
Nope, I haven't. Should I?
Oh no! I thought you pressed stop already.
Nope, I just put my finger on it.
Oh, okay, cool. All right. Well, that was the show for tonight. To the first gentleman, what was his name? Brock.
Brody.
Brody. No worries, man. Don't be sorry that you didn't enjoy the show. I get it. You're a fan of Mr. What did I call him again?
Hexenhammer. Oh,
Dixon Hummer. Man, you should have attacked. But in all honesty, you should have come after me for my ad hominems. Like I could have done what.
And Dave, you probably could have come a little more prepared, which with like I did here with a lot of articles and things like that.
Yeah, but he didn't present anything. So
yeah, true.
What like it's not like this video was. If he had brought a bunch of wrong stats, I would have brought the proper stats. What can be presented without evidence can be dismissed without evidence.
That's very true. And if I would wrap up, back to the whole racial differences thing, real quick. We recently found a finger that's about 88,000 years old in the Middle East. Okay. So that means for probably, let's say, 88,000 at least years, about 4,000 or 5,000 generations of separation between sub-Saharan Africans and those that left. That's a little bit of time for there to be a little bit of change.
For sure.
And why would it affect everything else except for personality and adaptability when intelligence is one of our survival mechanisms?
Sure.
Why would that evolve the same in every environment?
Doesn't make anybody less human, though.
Does not make anyone less human. It's just that's why it's such a losing argument, man. Sucks. Unfortunate.
Yeah.
Everyone have a good night.
Yeah. Later.